This is Brother Ross thanking you for tuning in again to From the Cross to the Lost. This is a day that God has given us to consider some of the things that happen in our life. For every one of us have problems, and every one of us have trials, and every one of us have pains and discomfort. And we often, as Christians, question, why does God let this happen to me? Because I love him. I've given my heart to him. I promised him I would serve him all the days of my life. I seek to glorify him and lift him up in my life each day. But yet I have such terrible struggles in life. It seems like everything I do is just getting more difficult and difficult each day. Well, that's what I want to talk to you about today. And I've entitled the message simply this: we as Christians have a perverted way of looking at trials. I was told a story by my mother many, many years ago when I was just a little boy about a butterfly. And she told me this because I was always catching butterflies and bringing them into the house and letting them loose. And this would irritate her. But yet she wanted me to know that when I saw a cocoon that a butterfly was about to hatch out of, that there were certain things that was going to happen, and it wasn't to injure the butterfly or to cause the butterfly to die as he came out of the cocoon, but it was part of God's plan not to hurt, but to strengthen and make strong his ability to fly and pollinate flowers around us. So she told me this story. She said a little boy found a cocoon one day, and he picked it up and began to look at it, and he realized that something was moving inside. So he quickly laid it back down on the ground, not knowing what was inside. And as he watched, this strange creature began to come out of the cocoon. At first, it was just a very small hole that had opened, and body parts started coming out of the cocoon. And he still didn't know what it was. And then the hole got just a little bit bigger, and half of the body came out of the cocoon, and he realized it was a butterfly being hatched and coming to life out of that cocoon. And he watched it, and it did fine for a while, but then it got about two-thirds of the way out of the cocoon, and all of a sudden it started to struggle and started to fight and try to squirm out of that cocoon just as hard and as it could. But the more it struggled, the less success it had. Finally, the little boy thought, well, he's going to die if I don't help him get rid of the cocoon. So he picked up a little sharp piece of wood, and he decided, if I make that hole bigger, then that butterfly won't have to struggle, and he'll come out of there and be a big, beautiful butterfly like I love to catch and watch all the time. So he made the hole bigger. Sure enough, just as he'd planned, the butterfly popped out of the cocoon. But it wasn't a normal looking butterfly. It seemed that as it come out of the cocoon, it had a huge body, but little bitty shriveled up wings that had not opened up. And all of a sudden, the butterfly began to walk on the ground. And he could walk, but every time he'd spread those little tiny wrinkled up wings to fly, he would fall to the ground. He tried this over and over and over again until finally he gave up. And as the little boy watched, the butterfly laid on the ground and died before his eyes. He went home crying to his mother and saying, I saw a beautiful butterfly coming out of a cocoon, and he got stuck, Mama, and he struggled and he couldn't get out. And I helped him. I made the hole bigger, and he come out, but he didn't look like most butterflies I've ever seen. He had shriveled up wings, and they couldn't fly. And his mama set him down and said, Now, son, you need to understand why that butterfly was struggling so. It was part of God's plan for his life. For you see, when a butterfly begins to come out of a cocoon, it gets out pretty well until two-thirds of its body's exposed, and then the hole is too small to get those huge wings that he's going to use to fly out of the cocoon. So God put a lot of liquid in his stomach or in his body. And he knew that when that butterfly would struggle and push to get out of the cocoon, that all of a sudden that liquid would be forced into the wings, and the wings would expand and become beautiful, and the cocoon would burst, and out came a beautiful creation of God, just as God had planned. It might have been hard to get out, but how beautiful he was when he came into being, and how beautiful he could fly with fabulous wings. The little boy looked confused, and she said to him, Son, God's plan sometime is for us to have to struggle. But after we have tried and tried and tried and keep on trying, God will provide an answer, and God will deliver us into something more beautiful than we could ever had expected in life. Now, I'll tell you that story today because, as I say, we as Christians have a perverted view of struggles and trials. We think every time something uncomfortable happens to us, God must be punishing us. Or every time there's a struggle in our life and we just can't seem to get out of the condition that's causing us so much anguish, that God must not love us anymore. And every time we struggle and struggle and struggle, we begin to question, what have I done to make God punish me like this? But you know, the truth of the matter is, just exactly like it says in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. It says very plainly, For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. That's God's way of saying that everything I allow to happen in your life, even though you see it as pain and struggle, it has a purpose of making you strong, to make you full in all that God would have you to accomplish in life. And when struggles come, we shouldn't look at them as punishment for something we failed to do, or God doesn't love us anymore, or God is punishing us for something. We should say, now what beautiful thing is God going to bring out of this time of struggle and pain? Well, you see, on the other side of every hard thing in life, if we're a Christian and we remain faithful to God, something beautiful emerges. God has a beautiful plan for your life, but that doesn't mean that you won't have to go through some hard times. God has a plan to do good and to bring perfect blessing to you in the end. But you may have to struggle a little to see that plan come into fruition. So I just simply want to say to you today, don't have a perverted view of struggles and trials as so many Christians do today. But just when you're going through it and you're feeling like it's so hard, just ask God, Lord, give me strength and give me direction. Give me peace to wait upon the promise. And dear God, I know that when all of this is past, something really beautiful is going to happen in my life. For as Jeremiah says in chapter 29, verse 11, I know the thoughts that I think toward you. In other words, God knows the purpose that He has in your life, and it's to do good to you and not evil, but to bring blessing that you can't even imagine. Now, if this has been a blessing to you today, would you please like and subscribe to this channel? And would you please share it with all of your friends and neighbors so that they too can understand that suffering and trials are not punishments, but for a Christian, it's God's way of strengthening us to make us able to receive the most beautiful things He has in store for our life. And it's always going to be good because He doesn't plan anything for evil for us as His children, but only the good things. Now, I thank you for tuning in, and I pray that if you are available on Sunday at 11 a.m. and you live in the Huntsville, Alabama area, that you would come and join me for service at Liberty Baptist Church at 3134 Highway 53 North in Huntsville, Alabama. It would be such a blessing to me to